Welcome to Inspire to Run podcast. We are here today with a special guest, Dan Browne. You are going to love this conversation. I had the chance to meet Dan just a few weeks ago. And let me tell you a little bit about him and what we're going to talk about today. First, he's a 2004 Olympic track and field team member, 10,000 meters and marathon, United States Army National Guard retired lieutenant colonel, 17-time U.S. national champion on road, track, and cross country, two-time NCAA All-American as a collegiate athlete at the U.S. Military Academy, and he's sales manager for the government division at Polar, my favorite fitness tracker and heart rate monitor company. So excited to have Dan on the show today. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Hey, thank you very much, Richard. Really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. And, when we were talking before, I love your mindset and philosophy about high performers and high performance athletes. And you just have such a rich background that I think would be very interesting for our community to learn about and just kind of learn your philosophy and mindset to help them along their journey. So, we'd love to just kind of kick off the conversation and just hear a little bit about your background and your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to say it's been an amazing journey to get the opportunity to explore my parameters athletically, and running and endurance has been kind of like that common denominator in that journey. I started running at a young age, ran through high school, had some decent success at the high school ranks, but still had some business to do, never winning a state title. And so, continued on into the collegiate ranks, went to the United States Military Academy, a tough place to go to continue that journey. But at the same time, looking back on it, it was an excellent choice to develop professionally and personally on the athletics side. And in the same way, had some success while I was there. Competed at the Olympic trials in 1996 when I was a junior, or referred to as a cow at West Point. And then senior year had some continued success, interspersed with some setbacks. Life doesn't always give you everything you want, and so did not win an NCAA title when I was there, but then I took those setbacks and really reorganized my training plans and philosophy, and came out that following year as a new lieutenant. In 1998, I won 5 U.S. national titles with sort of that refocused mindset, and continued on mixing a career with the Army World Class Athlete Program. And as a logistics officer, ultimately transferred to the Oregon National Guard. And then I continued on to as a National Guard officer, moved to Oregon, and then competed under a program called the Nike Oregon Project in 2002, ultimately allowing me to compete and succeed at the Olympic Games in Athens, Greece in 2004. So
That's incredible. I can't express how excited I am to have you on the show, just having an Olympic athlete here to kind of share your incredible journey with us. And, I love what you said about not only the successes and the wins, but also the setbacks. And, all of that together is part of kind of being a high performer and a high performance athlete. You're not always going to win, but you're going to have those setbacks, and what you learn from it is really going to determine, your future success. So, would love to hear a little bit more about that. Like, what are the cases where, you were winning, and what are the cases where you had those setbacks, and when did you learn from them?
Yeah. So overarching principle, what I would say is that bottom line is that you got to get back up one more time and you fall down. And the mind is the key there. Everyone experiences setbacks in life. But the key is to figure out ahead of time what you're going to do about it when they come your way. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. I'm sure everyone listening understands that. And so the key principle is to determine ahead of time what you're going to do when that happens. Many examples from high school. I remember I got second place to the same guy in the cross country 3,000 meters and the 1,500 meters my senior year. I think if you develop a mindset to let setbacks help fuel your future performance, that's the key. And in terms of constantly iterating toward achieving at a higher level.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I can imagine that it's not easy for someone to do that. If you're looking to get a certain time in a race, or if you're looking to, get on the podium and it just doesn't happen that day, I'm sure it's not easy for someone just to, dust themselves off, pick themselves up and kind of move on and figure out where to go next. So, what are the things that someone could do to help put them in that right mindset or be positive about the future?
Well, I think the first thing to do is, when you have setbacks, just understand that it's a natural process to feel, you know, sad or despondent over that performance. And that's okay. Give yourself a period of time to allow those emotions to happen. I remember, after I didn't do as well as I wanted at the state championships in Oregon, taking some time and talking with my coach later and expressing those things. And that's a key part of that process, because that feeling that you get when you don't accomplish your goals, if you don't feel that way, then from my perspective, it would mean that, well, maybe that goal wasn't as important as you were, for you. So like, it's a good thing to feel that way. The key then, though, is give yourself that time to process and then come back with, a really good, thoughtful analysis of what happened, and work with, people that are close in your life to then give you some, good guidance and pointers about, hey, what are things that I can maybe do a little bit differently? In today's information age, there is so much amazing information out there. And I've been blessed in my life to have many great mentors, both on the cognitive performance side, such as Dr. Nate Zinzer at West Point Center for Enhanced Performance, as well as a gentleman I've worked with in Denver named Dr. Justin Ross, great psychologist out there. It's, exploring the mind and having that fearless curiosity to explore your top level performance is it's a life process, and it doesn't stop. And if you think of it that way, I think it will then help you to frame the setback and then to frame it into something that can be very, very positive, because that's a key aspect, is, being authentic about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I love what you said about, getting support and with the coaches to help you with the mind. And it's interesting because, for my story, just about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I ran my first obstacle course race. And that was the time where I really started to get back into running. And I did the race, but after I finished, I was like, I could do this a whole lot better. So I got a coach. But my mentality with the coach was just tell me what to do and I'll go and do it. I don't need anything else. I don't need any motivation or inspiration. Like, I'm pretty self-motivated. But what I've learned over the years is that I absolutely needed someone to be there to push me to do more, to be better, and to do things that I've never done before. And it's just been an incredible journey that I don't think I would have been on without the support of a coach. So I really appreciate, what you said about that.
Yeah, and I think as a coach, I've had a natural evolution being from going from an athlete to a coaching advisor role. And one of the things that I try and inculcate into my team is the idea of, like, not just what to think, but how to think, because that will then translate into your ability to process information in real time as you're in a performance or a competition. And that helps develop your mastery, which I think is a key aspect. I learned from some of the best in the business: Alberto Salazar, Bob Larson, Joe Vijo, a number of other great mentors in my life who've kind of poured into me. And I, do hope to do the same thing with the next generation.
For sure. I'd love to talk more about that, how to think part. And I want to share a quick story. When we were talking about setbacks before, just another quick story about one of my races. This year, I ran the Brooklyn Half Marathon for the first time. And it was a way for me to run a race in New York City and see what it's all about. And I really just wanted to run it, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform. And I'm thinking I'm going to PR. I've never run the course before. And I did everything wrong. I didn't fuel properly before the race. I didn't sleep well the night before. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. But then after the race, of course, I didn't feel really great about myself or the race. But just a month later, there was a Father's Day race, and it was a 5 miler, so not quite a half marathon, but I ran it with this in the sense of I needed redemption, right? I needed to know that I could run a good race. And I felt really great about the race, and I was very positive in my thinking. And the end result is I did even better than I thought I could in that 5 miler Father's Day race. So, it's really interesting what you talk about setbacks, but how you kind of get back up and how you're thinking about, how you're going to perform in the future. So I know a little bit about how I was talking to myself internally, but tell me a little bit about what are the things that we could do in terms of how we talk to ourselves, or how do we think, during these tough times.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a really neat point with that. You had kind of the near miss, and then you kind of regrouped and had I a greater performance. I think inspiration is definitely a powerful fuel for that great performance in a lot of ways. And everyone is different in terms of what inspires them, and I think it's very important to be very thoughtful about not just the what you're doing, but kind of why you're doing it, because it's amazing the power that can be generated by thinking critically about why you're doing things. What is this inspiration rooted in? Because that's when I've personally found in my life to have had some of the biggest breakthroughs in performance is when I've been able to channel that inspired effort, especially in a sport as challenging as endurance running and athletics, where you're kind of pushing it on the red line for a lot of times, and you have to stay very focused throughout, because you're there in your own mind, right? You're doing a very physical activity, but it's also very mental, and only you know when you've given it your best effort, or when you've really pushed it to your the highest level that you can reach toward. And so it's that journey. I would definitely say that mastering your mind and how it works is a critical component. You hear the sports psychology stuff that's out there about visualization and mindfulness. It's all right on. You've got it, but you got to practice the tools, and that's what it really kind of comes down to, and do it consistently. A consistent application of good principles will yield excellent results. I often say, the more things, as the harder you work and the smarter you work, the luckier, you're going to be. Because really, I say that facetiously, because there's actually very little luck when it comes to high performance at the Olympic level, and or even if you're just trying to just optimize your own personal performance. It's not a lucky thing. It's something that is planned out. And but at the same time, you also have to think, and you also have to also sometimes take a little pressure off yourself and recognize that this is a journey, and that you're not going to be perfect, and nobody is, and to give yourself that ability to like have that margin, if you will. Because I think that in the mindset, sometimes if you're, and I've been a victim of this too, where like if you just always have like, I have to be perfect, or I have to do this perfect, sometimes that state of over arousal can actually be a negative thing in your life. So there really is truly a balance in terms of, when you think of the sympathetic and parasympathetic system within your body, you want to have a certain level of arousal to achieve performance when it comes for race day, but at the same time, it needs to be very channeled, and not and you don't want it to go so far that you're not getting the proper amount of sleep and recovery, because as with most, any physical activity, you have the training that you're trying to do, but then you also have the other half of training, I often say, is recovery. And if you're not really good at recovering from it, your training won't get to new levels. So it's kind of a balancing act. And I've trained with a lot of international athletes, and I've seen how they are masters of recovery and also working very hard. And I think that's kind of the key in today's age. It's very hard because we're go go go. I'll kind of rest when I'm dead mentality. But like ultimately, if what you're trying to do is try and get the best out of yourself, you need to be at least very cognizant of the idea of recovery being important.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's something that I've tried to focus on, especially these past couple of years, because, like you said, it's this hustle culture. It's a go, go, go. And, you got to do more. You got to be better. And you got a lot of things going on in life, a lot of stimulation from different areas. So it's hard to do. So I feel like I've gotten better at it, but I'm not great. So, so I'm using device, we'll talk about it a little bit later. So I'm using devices to kind of help me with that. And I'm learning all about it. But thank you for sharing that. That's for sure an important point about not only the training, but also the recovery. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey, your story about, what are some of the races that were, successful races for you, races where you've learned, and then, yeah, share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to add one thought to what you were mentioning, I think one of the keys when it comes to when you are busy is to really do a thoughtful process about the priorities in your life. That to me is the key. Once you identify your life priorities, it makes the what you're going to do throughout the day that much easier. When you have those guiding principles like, hey, these are my priorities, then just put them in stone, and once they're there, then it will help figure out, okay, what do I do now, type of thing. So yeah, I've had a number of different experiences that have been very shaping in my life on the running side. Everything from running a sub 4 minute mile at the Army Navy indoor track meet when I was a senior at West Point. That was quite a rocking experience there at Gillis Field House. It was amazing to be able to be the first cadet to have done that. But the interesting thing about that is that this is that thing about life is like immediately following that I had experienced a setback with a stress fracture, and it sort of took me out of that being able to perform at the NCAA level that year. So all this to say is that, like, it happens. You have these great, you work hard toward these successes, but it doesn't mean that life is just going to go perfectly, thereafter or whatever. So another example that I think back to is, well, even the Olympics in 2004, when I was working with Alberto and the Oregon project. I set kind of an ambitious goal to try and make it in the 10,000 meters and also the marathon team. And those are two separate Olympic trials contested, in February and July of 2004. And so they required two different phases of peaking and also the Olympics. And so we had to be very thoughtful about the training process leading up to it. But I remember, being in, Birmingham, Alabama, and, that this being ultimately the first place that I would make an Olympic team, and one of the more memorable experiences for me, just because of having, been a professional athlete for quite a while, and then realizing in that last mile that I was going to, my Olympic dream was going to come to fruition. I was going to make an Olympic team, was a very meaningful experience for me at a very deep level after many, many, many thousands of miles of training. So that was excellent. I guess another maybe example of a meaningful race to me that maybe wasn't okay. So then when I went to the Athens Olympics, I had set this ambitious goal. Ultimately, I went into 10,000 meters. That was the first event that I did, and I ended up getting 12th place, which I was very proud of that. I mean, I was the top American with a number of other great American Olympians in the field, and ran just about as competitively as I could have in a very warm and humid space, running, I think it was like about 28 low for 10,000 meters in those conditions. But immediately thereafter, I went back to the island of Crete and did my final train up for the marathon that was going to be contested. And on that day, the truth is that I'm just not a great hot weather runner. I never really was. Like, physiologically, I think my body composition didn't lend itself to that performance, which that's okay. We do the best we can, and but sometimes we have to recognize that we have limitations. And so, I worked with our Nike counterparts. We used the ice vests that we'd just gotten right before the games, and I set out an ambitious goal to run in that top 20 in the race, and and I did that, but ultimately I found that my body was not assimilating the fluid that I was putting into it. I mean, the temperature was 85, maybe even a little higher, with high humidity. They just had blacktopped the road And so it was just, imagine just the most brand new, fresh black pavement you'd ever seen, and all the heat of the day baked into it at 5 p.m. in Athens in August. And you get a picture of what it was like, just almost steam. So, unfortunately, I basically dehydrated out there. And I remember at 28K, the course in Athens there was literally almost a 10-mile stretch where from mile 10 to mile 20, we sort of kind of weaved our way up this hill until the final 10K descent. Well, which is, New York Marathon is difficult too, but this was on another level. Well, at about 28K into the race, my hamstring just completely went out, and I cramped, had to stop on the side of the road. But I determined in my mind that I was going to finish this thing, and I did it ahead of time. And even though I had to kind of go into survival stride mode and, stretch right before, I came into the Olympic Stadium at the end of the race, I saw it through. And that principle of following through with what you say you're going to do, I think is a very important thing in life, as best you can. You got to, you don't want to permanently harm yourself, but at the same time, developing that resiliency to really, mean what you say and do what you say you're going to do is a key principle. And I finished, I think, like 63rd or 60. I mean, it was not, I fell back, but that principle of building that muscle of following through is one of those key life principles that I found. So a not great success from my perspective, but at the same time, tremendous learning opportunity. And I think sometimes we learn more from our, near misses. That's the idea, is to try and learn more than just from those times when, just everything, you plan it and just everything goes great, So,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, great to hear that you still finished a race. And, I can only imagine being, in that kind of race and having that happen. And, I don't know what that does to your mindset at that point, if you're in pain or whatever the case may be. And the conditions you described, by the way, that sounds very much uncomfortable. So that alone, I can't even imagine.
But the thing is that, and I know, there's a lot of ultra marathoner types out there. It's amazing what the body can do as you develop your mindset and as you develop yourself physically over time. The key is consistency, and the key is also to just have just that fearless curiosity to explore your boundaries. And remember, it doesn't matter where you're at on the scale, whether you're running at 10-minute mile pace or running at 5-minute mile pace. This is the thing that I've learned about coaching that's been really fun, is that it's a neat process to help people whatever level they're at, because it's a very enjoyable thing to see people kind of reach for that next that thing that they're not quite sure if they can do. And so it's fun to see the joy when they express it and everything. So, and I encourage people to kind of continue to have faith, believe in what you're doing, get good guidance from people around you, and learn, and be, the mind is the key. Be mentally strong, and good things will happen.
For sure. Sage advice for our listeners. So I appreciate you sharing your running journey and your philosophy around, again, kind of being a high performer or a high performing athlete. I'd love for you to share, if you didn't share it in one of your stories, what would you say was the biggest obstacle that you faced in your running career, and then how'd you overcome it?
Okay. So after the Athens Olympics, I went into a period where, injuries are in running are inevitable, and they're very hard. That's why when I coach, I do everything I can to help athletes avoid what I call the injury cycle. And, that principle of ounce of prevention versus a pound of cure, everyone knows it, when they've ever been in that injury cycle. So after Athens, I had some serious IT band syndrome, and just the many miles of training and pounding over time. It took a toll on my body. Ultimately, I worked very hard with Alberto and the project to try and recover, but I found that I was not able to get my body right. And so after about a little over 2 months of just constant therapy every day, we decided that probably a surgery was going to be a good outcome for me to do. And so had a lateral release done on my right knee, and immediately the pain was gone. Unfortunately, I think my left knee got jealous, and so it started doing the same pain. And and within about a month, I was having the left knee done. And it's surgery it's a tough one. I'm sure many listeners out there maybe have experienced that. It can be a long process, especially when you're trying to get back to a high level. And I was no exception. But one of the things is you learn a lot about yourself when you're in those low periods, and you also learn a lot about the people around you in your life. And I think that that awareness was very critical. And I knew I was going into the woods basically with this experience. And for me, I just determined in my mind to get out of it, get out of those woods. And it took a long process. And I really wasn't running what I would say as effectively until well into 2006. And in large part, maybe not after even a couple other changes that I had made in my training program and everything, even 2007 with doing some more altitude training. So, but it goes back to that principle that I say about overcoming setbacks is you just have to determine that you're going to get back up no matter what it takes, and keep people in your life that kind of keep you positively focused toward that end. And the chances are, you'll come out of those woods, but it's not easy. And it wasn't easy for me. And, but ultimately helping people to kind of avoid that as much as possible has been an interesting process when you start talking about different recovery modalities, or even using technology to kind of help you to assess what is your appropriate load amount of cardio and or muscle load training that you should be doing. It's those ounce of prevention, pound of cures kind of things that will really help you to avoid those pitfalls.
Yeah, for sure. And I appreciate you sharing your story, and, glad to see that you were able to get through that successfully. And I love how you brought it back to mindset, having the right mindset to get through an injury in that, dark time. But also, I don't know if we talked about this yet, but you mentioned about having the right people around you, right? To positive people to help support you during those times. So that's a really interesting and I think really important point for our listeners. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then, you just talked about technology, and I love to, talk about that a little bit. So yeah, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that Polar is my favorite, fitness watch and heart rate tracker brand. And, I've used Polar for, I think it's been a couple of years now. And, it's helped me level up my training. And I'd love to hear from you a little bit about, how is, just tell us a little bit about the brand first, but then how can the technology give athletes, runners, an edge kind of in their performance?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, Polar Technology is the best in the business. I mean, we're the pioneers of heart rate technology, and our company is focused on providing the products and services that can really help optimize your life as it pertains to both the athletic and the personal arena, by developing this greater understanding of how hard you're working during training sessions, then using these products to help gain that insight, both not only on the training side, but also on your sleep and recovery side, which, as I mentioned before, is a key component. Understanding quantitatively how you're doing on both sides of that coin, in my opinion, is the key to success. It's all about using these sensors to kind of, paint this like 24/7 kind of holistic picture of like your current physiologic status that get, and thereby giving you that data that you need to improve basically. And we have, Polar has something called Flow, which is our ecosystem where our sensors go into. And it doesn't just stop at sharing that data so that you can have that situational awareness of where you're at in real time. But then they also give you the opportunity to use that data, and provide training guidance to you to whatever your goal may be. It's actually it's an amazing system. I've seen it, used it. It's been a very fun process for me to kind of move from that coaching focused arena to then being a part of industry, and especially on this wearable technology side, and deep diving into it, and gaining, like, from my perspective, deeper insights into this. And I think it's going to allow me to help me be even a better coach in the future. And no, I just appreciate the opportunity to be with them, and it's been fun.
So, I want to share a little bit about my story as to, why I decided to go with Polar throughout my training. I got back into running just a few years ago, as I mentioned, obstacle course races and road races. And I think it was 2 years ago, maybe. I ran a race and I did well, but not as well as I wanted to. And I told my coach, I will do whatever it is you tell me to do. You just need to help me get to where I want to go. So one of the things that he recommended was to change my training plan from running based on time and speed to, or a distance and speed, I should say, to time and on my feet as well as heart rate. So I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, you have to get yourself a heart rate monitor. So that's basically kind of what led me to Polar. And I'm sure, somebody I knew had the device. I'm like, and I researched it, and I'm like, you know what? This is what I want to go with. So I absolutely love it. And it's definitely transformed my training. It's definitely transformed my performance in races. And it's also given me confidence in my runs, because before, I have to run, so for our listeners, if you're running by heart rate, there's different zones, right? Zones 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I had no idea what zones that would be based on my pace. So I had to use the watch quite often. But now I kind of know, right? Now I kind of have a feeling, I kind of feel like I'm probably getting up there to a zone 4. Right. And I look at my watch, and sure enough, that's where I'm at. So it gives me more confidence that I'm really listening to my body and understanding a lot more about what's going on because of this technology. And that's definitely helped me through my training. So anyway, so that's a little bit about my story, about, how it's helped me along my journey. And that's one of the reasons why I'm super excited to have you here to, share that piece of it, as a, how did that technology, again, help someone become a high performer or high performance athlete?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's what I like to say is quantitative analysis is always going to be superior to subjective assessment. And what I mean by that is the data is important, right? But then it's what you do with that data that then really synthesizes into a better training plan. That's the key. And there is a component to where you do need to have an intuitive feel, but that comes with time. You start, I used to be able to tell within about 0.3 seconds what my time was in a 400-meter repeat, almost without fail. But that's because I'd run hundreds and thousands of repeats, so you develop that. But like, when you're growing in your ability to understand what's going on in your body, and remember, nothing is ever static. Change is constant. And so understanding that things are either kind of moving this direction, or maybe just some different evolution of that. But like the sensor, obviously I'm biased, but at the same time, I really understand at a very deep level now the power that these sensors can then give you, what I would call your own personal awareness of what's going on within your heart, and and then using that awareness to then translate into those changes of training methodology or behavior modification that you're looking to do. Because heart rate is one thing, understanding your sleep is another. I mean, and there's a lot of people that would say, you know what, you can do all the hard training in the world, but like, if you want to get in the proper recovery, you're not gonna improve. So it's like, you get into these discussions all the time with people, like, what's the most important pillar of performance? Well, they're all important: nutrition, sleep, activity, recovery, mindset. They're all interlinked. And as you start to think about it that way, thinking about, as you're optimizing your own personal, these systems within, then think of it like a wheel sort of spinning faster and faster toward the goal that you want to achieve. That's kind of what I would say. And I think that, the truth is that there's, Polar has a lot of great tools to help you toward that end.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about sleep before and I didn't mention it. I mentioned focus mostly on the heart rate, but yeah, for sure. The sleep score that I get, every morning when I wake up, I just kind of hit the button. I say I'm awake and then I just wait a couple of seconds and it tells me, how I slept. And I'm starting to see the patterns like, oh, well, if I do this at a certain time or, if something's going on, like I could start to see why. And maybe sometimes I'm surprised, right? One way or the other, like, oh, I thought I would have been a bit better tonight, or wow, I was way better than I thought. So sometimes it's a surprise, but I'm also starting to learn like I can do or shouldn't do certain things, as I'm kind of winding down for bed.
Yeah, and it's that self awareness that the tools will help you to improve and to understand that, like, is really the key to iterative performance improvements. That's what it means to be all you can be, to get the most out of yourself. And then once you overlay the mindset training on top of all the good behaviors, in terms of, as you're getting more sleep, as you're dialing in your nutrition a little bit better, as you're really figuring out what it means to where you're maybe not overtraining and not undertraining. Once you overlay the mindset over the top of that, that's when the magic happens. And then you'll really, whatever your potential is, you will reach it, no question. And it's a neat journey. And I really enjoy talking with people and hearing about their journey, and getting opportunities to help them.
Love it. Love it. Dan, this has been so helpful, so inspirational. We talked a lot about mindset. We talked a lot about, coming back from setbacks and then succeeding and learning and succeeding from there. We talked about recovery being just as important as the training. We talked about, the technology and how it can give you an edge. And, this has been really, really insightful. So, I'd love to just learn a little bit about, what's next for you and what's next for Polar.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're really excited, and we got a lot of great things coming up in our lineup. It's just, I think technology. What I've learned about wearable technology is that it's still developing. The landscape. I think my own assessment is it's kind of like computers way back in the day. Like, the it's these sensors, I think, are going to become more and more important to our daily lives as we continue to move forward into the future, giving us more insights, better understanding of ourselves, and helping us. And but also recognizing that this is a tool like anything else, and it's important to develop your own critical thinking about, and that consistency. But it's an important tool, and I see a great future in the wearable space.
Awesome. And then how about for you personally?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's some fun things. I mean, once you get a taste of the Olympics, you kind of always want to go back to it. And so I've been, working with Patent Legacy Sports Foundation, and they have an amazing program that they're looking to iterate. There's a sport called pentathlon it's really an amazing sport. You combine fencing, swimming. Right now, it's equestrian show jumping and running and shooting, and it's like they say it's like you're like the most complete athlete. It was envisioned by Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the modern Olympics. So I got an opportunity a number of years ago to be a part of it, and I got some neat things coming up with them, and I'm looking forward to exploring what that means, how utilizing technology might be able to help them as we move toward Paris and LA 2028. So, just good stuff. You'll be hearing more about it.
All right. Well, looking forward to it. So, kind of as we wind down here, Dan, what is the one thing that you would say to our community to help inspire them to run after a setback?
I would say that just understand that you're not alone in this process, and that the key is to remember that, to keep your center, the people in your lives close to you that will help you along that journey. Keep positive voices in your life that inspire you to get back on the horse and to try again. You know, we're you know the world it's crazy sometimes, but like I think that you know we need great examples and stories of people that overcome and achieve that heroic effort that inspires us when we read about it, and that's the some of the great things about Olympianism and everything. And so it doesn't mean that but you don't have to be an Olympian. It's not about that. It's about, but it's because whatever it is that your sort of your network or platform, people, you can inspire people, no matter how far your reach is. But just and one of the things that I learned from Dr. Justin Ross is that idea of like this, an expressed value versus an engaged value. And I learned this from him, and I thought it was a very powerful visualization. A lot of things get said, right? But it's those things that you do that really implant and build that muscle into your psyche and your mind as you go forward. So it doesn't matter if what's happened in the past. Just like continue to reinforce within yourself, like, hey, no, I said I was going to do this. I'm gonna come back from this, and then as you experience that overcoming that setback, it's gonna reinforce that mechanism within your mind that, hey, that build that capacity. Hey, I remember I overcame this. I can go and reach for this new thing that I'm going after, and that translates across sports and life and personal and family and the whole gamut. And so that's how you optimize life. So I wish you all
Love it.
well. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Dan. How can our community find you and follow your journey online as well as Polar?
Yeah. Well, you can find us on all the social media channels, on Polar. We're very easy to find. It's at some point there's probably going to be some news about the programs, that I'm getting ready to find. You can also find me on like Facebook, just under my, Dan.Browne or whatever. And yeah, no, I look forward to hearing from people, whether it's on, Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. Like it's exciting to hear from people and about their journeys. So thank you.
All right. Well, I'll include that information in the show notes to make it easy for our listeners to find you and Polar and follow your journey, and, reach out to Dan and share your journey. Let him know that you heard him on Inspired to Run podcast. So with that, thank you so much, Dan. I really enjoyed this conversation. And again, it's an honor for me to have you on the show. So thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks very much, Richard. Really a pleasure.